Well, we were very excited about this site because it's a gift to the AIA to have a site so prominent in the state of North Carolina. But the site had a lot of challenges. It's a funny shape, shaped a little bit like a pork chop. It's got a triangular corner. It's not very big. And the city required, a great deal of parking. So from the beginning, we realized that a major challenge would be how to fit both our building and the parking on the site, and they're both about the same size, about 12,000 square feet each. So we realized from the beginning that this was a landscape challenge as much as an architectural challenge. And we got the best landscape architect we know of, Greg Bleem in Charlottesville, Virginia, with whom I've worked for 20 years on other projects, to get involved. And he sat at the table with us when we made our first sketches of the site, equating open space, parking, building, orientation, cross ventilation, rainwater runoff, to arrive at a solution that we thought was very handsome. But the primary aspect of the solution is that the landscape and the architecture are part of the same concept. Well, this is a really special site here on the corner of Peace and Wilmington Street. It's adjacent to the governmental center, yet Peace Street is, an academic, commercial, residential street. We wanted to respond to both conditions. We wanted it to relate to Peace Street because we think in the next 10, 25, 50 years, this will become a more and more important commercial storefront part of Raleigh, a lively urban area. On the south side, you've got the state capitol by Talon Davis, 1840, arguably one of the 3 or 4 best buildings in North Carolina, as well as all of the buildings that house the administrators, the politicians, the folks who have a lot to do with the way our state is run. So we have an entrance on that side that sort of welcomes the state of North Carolina to the Center for Architecture and Design. And it's on that side that we put the parking garden and the garden park. And of course the big deep overhang like a front porch, and the stone wall runs right out and, if you will, offers its hand to people to bring them into the site.
First of all, the whole building was designed on 2 major corners in downtown. Peace and Wilmington Street is a major thoroughfare for traffic in and out of downtown Raleigh. So we wanted to select this site because of the great visibility, because of the fact that there were public transportation options all around the corner here. When you look at public transportation, we've got the CAT line, which is the Raleigh Capital Area Transportation bus line that runs right in front of our site. In fact, before we built this building, the actual bus stop was in front of our building site, and we incorporated an actual bus bench into the building itself to accommodate bus passengers. The other bus transportation option in downtown Raleigh is the R line, which is the free bus service that travels all through downtown. We actually have 2 stops for the R line that service this building, one a half block to the south of us and one directly across the corner from us here. So it's a wonderful bus access for the building here. The other aspect is we knew that the Triangle area is planning light rail in the future, and we knew when we purchased the site here that just about a block and a half over there was a planned light rail stop. So sometime in the future, when Raleigh ever gets light rail service, we feel that we're pretty well positioned to be on a light rail line as well for the center.
The fact is, almost every building built before 1920 was a sustainable building, because people knew they had to open the windows to keep cool in summer. They knew they had to, make the walls thick to give them insulation in winter and have overhangs on their roof to provide shade. But still today, 80% of what makes a sustainable building is the way that it's sited and the basic bones or structure of the building. Let's take our building here. It's sited facing due south, the best orientation you can have, because with an overhang, you can shade the building in summer, but the low sun comes under that overhang and warms the building in winter. Because it faces south and is relatively narrow, you can open the windows and the air flows right through in May or September to naturally cool the building. So it's relatively simple things like that are inherent in the design of any good building that make it sustainable. And then, of course, it's very nice and useful to have recycled materials and photovoltaic panels and geothermal heating and cooling. But without those first features, how the building is sited, how it collects rainwater, how the roof shades the building, everything else wouldn't go to make up it a sustainable project. From the earliest part of the design, we wanted the building to feel rooted to its site, and we conceived of a stone wall that would both tie the building to the site and relate the building to North Carolina. So, as you know, there's a stone wall that runs north-south that divides the parking garden from the garden park. Then that wall turns and goes into the buildings and forms a welcoming wall on the Wilmington Peace Street corner. And we chose stone. Our landscape architect, Greg Bleen, chose a particular blend of stone, which I think is quite beautiful. It has blues in it as well as ochres and rust colors, and it comes from 3 different regional quarries. The wood on the building is a major sustainable feature. It was also a choice that we made because it was a North Carolina product. It's cypress. It comes from the Great Dismal Swamp. It's actually cut from trees that were blown over in a recent hurricane. And we like it because it's very functional. It forms a rain screen that protects the building and helps to keeps the building from absorbing heat in the summer. But also it's just a warm, friendly material that people are used to, and it's nice to touch. We wanted the AIA to be a dignified building and an important building in the downtown of Raleigh, but we wanted it to also be an approachable building that people would feel comfortable with. And we probably got more comments about the cypress siding on this building than any other feature. The benefit of the big overhang is that it shades the building and it provides a nice porch on the south side. This is a benefit that's been known in North Carolina for over 300 years. You'll find farm cabins and county courthouses and plantation houses and very modest fisherman shacks with porches on the south side from Manteo to the mountains, because it's a very natural, passive way to keep your building cool in the summer, and also to provide a very useful indoor-outdoor area. Our overhang, for example, shades the entire southern wall from March 21st to September 21st and keeps the building naturally cool. Striking feature of this building is the roof. We've already talked about the south-facing overhang. But because we wanted the building to relate strongly to the government side and strongly to the Peace Street commercial side, we used the shape of the roof to tie the two together. So the roof has a large overhang facing south that goes upwards, then it turns down and continues as a roof on the north face and turns out again to form a shelter to the sidewalk on Peace Street. So this one gesture of the roof, shading the building, wrapping the building, and then turning out and sheltering the street, is in a sense the essence of the building. And therefore, the material for that roof was very important to us. Obviously, we couldn't do something like that with a 3-tab shingle. It just wouldn't have the kind of feeling that we wanted. Luckily, we were given a major donation by Umicore VM Zinc for a beautiful zinc roof that will easily last 150 years. It's a solid zinc material that has a slightly copper sheen to it, And I think it goes beautifully with the wood siding, the stone walls, and the trees that surround the site. It was a lovely choice of material. Why is there a parking lot in this building? We were asked by the city of Raleigh to park over 30 cars on the site. And on a small site, that's quite a challenge. That's about 12,000 square feet of parking, and the building itself is 12,000 square feet. So we didn't want to have a suburban strip mall kind of building surrounded by parking. Therefore, we took the parking on as an opportunity. And we placed the building at the far north side of the site. That left all the south open, and half of that was going to be occupied by the parking. So we said, let's turn that into an asset and making it into a parking garden. There are hundreds of parking spaces all around this site. So at certain times of the year, we could close the parking lot and use it for sculpture exhibits, or to display a Habitat for Humanity house, or to have a movie at night. And therefore we could recapture this area of the site for public use, as well as architect-related activities. It seemed such a good idea that we decided to call it the parking garden, to get away from this idea that parking is this vaguely utilitarian thing that's there to serve a building. It could actually, when not filled with cars, be an active participant in the life of the AIA.
And why did you choose the materials you choose?
Well, obviously because it's so prominent when you look at the site. It's so prominent, we wanted to use good materials. We didn't want to pave it in asphalt. We wanted a material that would be nice to look at, that would reflect the sun, but most importantly would allow rainwater to percolate through it and be captured in storage areas underneath. One of the greatest problems facing not only North Carolina, but all states in the Southeast, is water runoff. Because we're building so many roads and so many parking areas and so many buildings, the water from those impervious surfaces are scouring our streams and ultimately polluting our rivers and our sounds. So if we can collect the water at its source and keep it there, we've done a good thing for North Carolina. So our parking lot captures all the rainwater. It's quite wonderful to see it. There's another advantage to that too. If often in the summer we have thunderstorms, and if we got an event planned that day, once the thunderstorm passes, the parking lot's dry in about a half an hour because the water runs through the surface.
The gutter system on this building was designed to handle a lot of the water that we would get on the site. The roof on this building is over 6,000 square feet, and we knew we needed to capture all the water from that, because one of the goals is to capture all the water on the site and treat it appropriately before it ever gets out to the sewer system. So what you see on this building is a huge gutter system and an even bigger downspout. We took 12-inch diameter steel pipe, cut it in half to form the gutter that you see on the building, and then used the same steel pipe at 12 inches as the downspout on the building. It collects every drop of water from the roof and then brings it down into the pool down below here. The pool fills up and spills over into the bioretention cell, which then cleans all the water as it filters out into the city water system. The significance of the bioretention cell, or what some people might refer to as a bioretention basin, is the primary water management system for the building. It takes all of the water from the roof, the pool, and the parking lot, and it filters it over a 3-day process through the length of the cell, through the magnolia trees and the ground cover. And it cleans the water to a point where it's extremely clean before it ever gets into the Raleigh water system. And of course, in the sewer system in Raleigh empties out into the Neuse River Basin. So it's our obligation to make sure that every bit of water that comes off of this site is as clean as possible before it ever gets into the Triangle watershed. I added the drip irrigation system to this because it's one thing we haven't really talked about, but I think it's important. One of the really interesting water features we have in the building is the landscape irrigation system. Initially, we weren't going to irrigate the site, but we did find that we really needed to do that. So we tried to find as responsible an irrigation process as we could for the building. So every bit of irrigation that you see on the site here is actually below ground. So none of the irrigation we do ever it goes above the ground. We don't have any above ground sprinklers, so there's no evaporation. And there's no overwatering on any of the irrigated sites on the building. That even includes the grass. The grass is the very first underground drip irrigation for a lawn in the Southeast. And we're very proud of that, and it's something that we're experimenting here in the Southeast. From the very outset of this project, the building committee and our board of directors wanted to make sure that we had the most efficient heating and cooling system in the building. And certainly one of the most efficient on the market today is using a geothermal system. And so we committed very early on in the building project to the geothermal system. Now, most of the time, a geothermal system is going to cost you quite a bit more up front, but the payback comes 6 to 8 years into your life of the building, and the life cycle cost of geothermal will save you innumerable amounts of money over the life of your building. And so what we figured is about a 7 to 8 year payback on our geothermal system. What we've done is drilled 20 wells underneath the parking lot. They are drilled to a depth of 350 feet each. It's considered a closed loop system, so all of those wells are connected with PVC pipe, and there's water that runs through those wells and that pipe in order to pick up the constant ground temperature of 55 to 60 degrees. That water is then brought into the mechanical room, where it's then distributed to 10 different ground source heat pumps throughout the building. And that's what heats and cools the building. It's a far more efficient method of heating and cooling your building because you're not having to pull in outside hot, moist air in the summertime. You're just heating and cooling a constant 55, 60 degree temperature. So our energy savings from that geothermal system, as well as some of the other passive systems we do have in the building, we anticipate about a 64% energy drop in this building. So far, now that we're in the building for about 3 months, we're on target and we're actually doing better than the 64%. What is a green screen and what's its benefit? Green screen, actually, it's a proprietary name, and it's an actual product from a company called Green Screen. A lot of people like to call them lattice work, basically. It's a steel structure that is connected to the south side of the building. Because of the orientation of this building, we get direct sunlight all day long on the south side of the building. And of course, all the major functions in this building are on the south side. We have our offices on the south side. We have all the multi-purpose room functions on the south side. So we need to some way protect the occupants and the functioning of the building in terms of heating and cooling on the south side of the building, over and above the window shades that we have and the glazing that we have on the windows, primarily because that direct sun during the winter time really heats up this building. So that's the good thing. The south-facing windows give us wonderful light all year long, but especially in the wintertime. However, we do need to have some shade. So in order to shade, especially the multi-purpose room where we have meetings going on all day long, we need to have some shade in the wintertime. And the green screen is intended to do that for us. So what you'll see is Carolina jasmine that's planted in little beds that will grow and hopefully fill that green screen in over the next 2 years. And that will soften the light during the wintertime. Now the summertime, we don't have to worry as much about the sunlight coming in because the 12-foot overhang on the building, or what we like to call the porch, shades the entire building during the summertime. It's just in the wintertime months when the sun is lower in the horizon that we need that extra protection from the green screen.
That's one of the reasons that we often, I'm a big fan of wood construction because it's a very sustainable material, but my second choice is steel because almost all steel is recycled. But I think, as this building illustrates, we need to change our thinking about the shape of buildings and how they relate to the land, and that would make them truly sustainable. Well, I'll stick around. I'm going to actually go check and see if I need to water my plants. So.
But I'm going to need my notes back. You're not getting me further down here, are you? Where are you getting me? You're not getting my lap, are you?
I'm going to do all the above.
No.
Don't worry.
Because I want my notes.